here with another awesome episode for you guys. My name is Andy. I have Mr. Milton Gonzalez here.
Hi.
He's going to join us today, and we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of stuff, but mainly we're going to be focusing on the importance of mindset and what that means to a young adult in today's life. Because I know we're talking a little bit about off air a little bit about how it's easy to overlook that and see past that and just get stuck in grind. Because I know everybody here at UTRGV is trying to accomplish a lot of good things, and they want to make sure that they put their family, and a lot of us are first generation graduates and things like that. So let's kind of just jump right into it, Mr. Milton. What would you say is something that I guess a young adult like me and a lot of adults here at UTRGV tend to overlook, or I guess just not introduced to the entire mindset and what that even means?
All right. And it's not only a topic that needs to be discussed amongst the youth, but also older people.
Mm-hmm.
So I coach young folks and old folks, and all of them have a commonality. And the commonality is that they have yet to discover the potential that they have, that there is a mind that can be developed, that there is such a thing as growth within the mind, that it's not stagnant or stale or fixed, but can grow. There's this common belief. I had a young man who approached me after a conference, and he asked the question. He says, could I ask you a question? I said, of course. He was about 24 years old. He says, you see, I was a drug addict for the longest time, and he says, I was told that brain cells die, they don't regenerate, they don't restore. He says that I'm stuck in this condition for the rest of my life. And I looked at him straight in the eyes and I said, they lied to you. And he started crying. I said, there's research to back it up. I said, as long as you keep on thinking, you will keep on growing. As long as you keep on reading and troubleshooting and forcing your mind to make those new connections, you will make them. And that's part of the growth mindset. You're not born with innate, fixed qualities, characteristics that you're stuck with the rest of your life. If you were born on the wrong side of the tracks, as they say, if you were born into an impoverished household, that doesn't mean that you're going to be poor yourself. Mm-hmm. Poverty is in the mind. Poverty is only in the mind. And there is a saying that a lot of people, I use this in my conferences a lot. I tell people to fill in the blank. Mm-hmm. I tell them, curiosity killed, and what would you say, Andy? The cat. And ignorance is? Bliss, right? Knowledge is?
Key.
Power. Everybody says power. So I tell them those are three big lies. Mm-hmm. Curiosity didn't kill the cat. Stupidity killed the cat. Mm-hmm. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is poverty and death. Mm-hmm. Knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is power. Mm-hmm. And just as you answered the fill-in blanks for me, 90% of the population would do the exact same thing here in the States, and here in the Valley especially. And all three are lies. So we are born with this fixed mindset, or we're taught this fixed mindset if we grew up in that type of home, that is the answer to the blank. Mm-hmm. And they're all lies. So you have to get out of that mindset in order to grow and to discover your potential and to develop your fullest potential.
Yeah, I guess it is, I have heard things like, there's just some stuff that you're just born with. Mm-hmm. I guess it's like a belief that it's like talent. A lot of people tend to lean a lot into like I was born this way, and when you grow up and you're 4 years old and you're exposed to this poverty lifestyle, and you know what I mean, you're introduced to nothing else. This is what you know. This is all that you've seen and know, right? So how can someone listening right now transition or begin the transition to say, hey, let me start build, because this is relatively brand new, right? We were talking about this off air, where it's like, right, it's only been introduced in the past 10 years.
Yeah, probably the past 10 years. Carol Dweck, for those of you listening, Carol Dweck wrote a book called Mindset. Mm-hmm. And that was the kind of the precursor to everything that is happening today. She didn't discover it, she didn't develop it, it's been around. Mindset has been a big thing for ages. Mm-hmm. I was mentioning to you before the show that even Greek philosophers had said, I'm talking thousands of years ago, said everything begins with a thought. Mm-hmm. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, everything begins and ends with a thought. One of my favorite books, one of my favorite authors in Proverbs is Solomon. And Solomon says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Where the mind goes, the man follows. Everything starts with a thought. Another one of my great, in my favorite book, one of the authors that I like, Paul, the apostle, he says, don't conform to the ways of the world. He says, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Mm-hmm. And that was written, a long time ago. So Carol Dweck brings all that together. She writes a book called Mindset, and that's where the explosion occurs, and everybody is, everyone's mind is woken up to this reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because even me, even myself, I'm pretty, I would say within just the last year maybe, I was kind of reading and more about feeding my, unconscious mind positivity, mm-hmm. or I have a bunch of sticky notes all over my apartment that have like positive quotes, positive messages, and one of my good friends, Yareli, gave me some of those, and it's crazy, like, you put those around and you're feeding your mind, and it's like I'm, supposed to be in the loop, I'm supposed to be in latest books and all that stuff, and mm-hmm. I didn't know that just simply, he talked a little bit about unconscious mind, and I know we're talking about brain, and
sure.
like, what does it mean to feed your mind?
Right, and I love what you just said about the subconscious. Some people call it unconscious or subconscious, and really, that's what's being formed. It's constantly being fed, mm-hmm. but it's what's most in operation the first 7 years of a child's life, and therefore we tell parents, because I've been an educator for so many years, for about 30 years now, we tell parents, be careful what you tell your kids. Mm-hmm. If you tell a child growing up that he's stupid consistently, if you tell them anything that is equivalent to that, they will grow up believing that they're stupid. Mm-hmm. If you tell a child that they have potential, that they're great, and that they're good, and that they can do more, never give up, and never say, I can't, mm-hmm. that's what they will do eventually in life. So when you talk about, and I'll go back to the subconscious mind, but when you're talking about your declarations and affirmations that you post everywhere, uh-huh. those are good things, but let me tell you something, this is what I've always said. Affirmation and declaration without action is the beginning of insanity. And so you can get up every morning and look at a piece of paper and say, I'm great, I am an athlete, I am a runner, because I'm a marathon runner. I'm a marathon runner, and never run a marathon in your life because you never put that one thing into action, yes. and it becomes insanity. Yes. You can't speak those things just like that into existence. Mm-hmm. Even in faith, the Word of God says faith without action is dead. Mm-hmm. And so faith without works, you have to act on it. You can't just say it. So the subconscious mind is what's developed the first 7 years. And actually, your subconscious mind right now is what pretty much controls 90% of your mental operations, or 90% of ours. Uh-huh. So our subconscious mind is what keeps us awake, keeps us alive while we're asleep, mm-hmm. keeps our heart beating, everything functioning. But everything, if you've ever seen an iceberg, I was on a ship going to Alaska, and the captain told us to go out into the deck and to see an iceberg that was to the left-hand side. And we went out there, and I've always heard the proverbial, the tip of the iceberg. Uh-huh. So I went out there and I saw the tip of the iceberg, which wasn't monumental. It was not this huge, monstrous, structure. But he says what's underneath the water is what's most impressive. And he says what's underneath the water is what sunk the Titanic. Mm-hmm. It wasn't what was over the water, it was what was underneath the water. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the structure of an iceberg, the top, which you can see, represents the conscious mind. Mm-hmm. Everything, our emotions, our actions, everything. The rest of it that's underwater, that sunk the Titanic, that sinks man, mm-hmm. is underneath. It's the subconscious mind. And those are things that until Carl Jung, if you've ever studied psychology, Carl Jung, which was into, of course, psychoanalysis, he said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it your destiny. So you've got to get to the core, but no one can do that for you except yourself.
I love what you said about how the subconscious mind is always being fed, because I feel like I don't think people understand that, right? If you're on social media all the time, right? Instagram, Facebook, whatever it may be, mm-hmm. and you don't know that your mind is absorbing all this, and that could be, let's just say, give an example with friends, right? And they're always negative, and you share your thoughts or your plans and stuff, and you don't know that the conversations, the posts that you're sharing, the things that you're seeing, they're all being absorbed by your mind, right? And I had a guest last semester, and she touched a little bit on this, about how you even have to watch out on what you're feeding your mind, because it's always going. It's not something that we have control over and turn it on and turn it off and like, okay, I wanna accept this, I'm not gonna accept that. So I think social media is also relatively new nowadays.
Right.
So
Your atmosphere influences your subconscious mind, and your atmosphere is everything around you, from relationships to social media, to what you read, to what you watch, to what you hear. Everything is affecting, you said it right. The subconscious mind has no filter. It doesn't have a door that opens and closes. Your conscious mind does. Your conscious mind does. The subconscious, which is 90% of your operations, does not. So everything that you're exposing it to will sooner or later have an effect. If you expose your little, your son, I'm sure you don't have kids yet, but once you have kids, if you expose them to movies that are scary, they're going to think that someone is hiding in the closet. That's the subconscious mind. Actually, adults work the same way.
Yeah,
you expose yourself to scary movies, and eventually you're going to think that your house is haunted. You're going to hear things. That's how powerful the subconscious mind is. So you have to constantly be aware of what you're exposing it to. Jim Rohn, who was Jim Rohn was Tony Robbins' coach, and Jim Rohn said, you become the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So you have to get to the point where you become so selective, and we're talking to everyone listening, and you want to know how to change, how to change your outcomes, is become more selective in whom you expose your mind to. You see, Gandhi said, never let someone with dirty feet walk through your mind. Why would you? And so when you look at, someone told me the other day, said, Milton, in your mind, and you walk into a room filled with negative people, thinking that you're going to influence them for good, I beg to differ. I would say that they will influence you for bad, because negative energy has so much more weight over the positive energy. That's just the way it is in relationships. So you've got to be careful. Once again, going back to Jim Rohn, you become the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. Just to capitalize a little bit on, or piggyback on what you said, this other person talked about the hug and all that. See, this is a powerful thing. Someone with negative energy is not going to give you a hug, by the way. Okay, I'm just telling you. They don't care to give a hug, and that's why they're all negative, bitter, and So, but what I want to talk about is the power of a hug, and how that can actually reboot someone or recalibrate someone. So what happens when I'll go back all the way to a woman who's birthing a child. And the moment that the baby comes out of the birthing canal, comes out into the light, into the sound, and their cortisol peaks right away, because they're in a state of anxiety. So the mother brings the baby in, and the moment the mother embraces the baby goes into this state of calmness and peace. Same thing happens when we embrace someone, whether it is a child, whether it is a spouse, or a loved one, or a friend. It produces something. So what happens is, the moment that there is a 7 to 10 second hug that is actually a real hug, what it does is there is a hypothalamic reaction. It's the hypothalamus and the amygdala, and they all work together, and they send a signal. We're talking about now biology, sends a signal to the adrenal glands, which secrete adrenaline and cortisol. And so what happens is, when somebody is in a state of anxiety, their cortisol is peaking, which takes them from a stress level 1 to a stress level 3, and which produces, if you stay at that level for periods of time, extended periods of time, that produces fibromyalgia, it produces migraines, diabetes, weight gain, and so on and so forth. But when you embrace, the opposite is produced in the body, which is called oxytocin. And oxytocin is the love hormone. And the love hormone increases, the stress hormone decreases, producing a sense of calmness and peace and overall wellness in the body. So that is the psychology or the biology behind a hug and how that works.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. Please hit the subscribe channel so that you stay up to date with all the latest episodes. Also, can you please give this video a like if you learned anything at all from the episode you just saw? Thank you guys. See y'all next time.